What if the most powerful weapon you could ever carry wasn't your intelligence, your logic, or your ability to win an argument, but the silence you choose to hold? In a world that constantly screams for attention, silence has become threatening. We've been taught that being silent means being weak. But what if that's a lie? What if real power is quiet, still, observing? What if the most influential people aren't those who speak the loudest, but those who know when not to speak at all? Before we dive deeper, if you're someone who's drawn to exploring the unconscious, hidden patterns of the self, and the psychology behind power, meaning, and transformation, I invite you to subscribe, leave a comment, like this video, and share it with someone who's ready to awaken. Let's go beyond surface-level advice and into something far more powerful. Today's video isn't about staying quiet to avoid conflict. It's about learning to use silence as a tool, a sign of self-mastery, presence, and psychological strength. Nietzsche understood this. He knew that true power doesn't come from proving yourself, but from realizing you no longer need to. We'll explore how silence can become your greatest ally. How it shields your energy, protects your peace, and transforms the way others see you. We'll also draw on insights from thinkers like Carl Jung, Viktor Frankl, Arthur Schopenhauer, Gabor Mate, and of course, Nietzsche himself. But let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why you feel so uncomfortable in silence? Why do you rush to respond, explain, defend? Hold on to that question. Because the answer might reveal more about you than any argument ever could. And we're just getting started. Why do we sabotage what we most deeply desire? Why do we avoid silence as if it were dangerous? Because silence forces us to face parts of ourselves we often keep hidden, parts tangled in fear, pain, and unresolved conflicts. Carl Jung taught us that people will do anything to avoid facing their own soul. We distract ourselves with noise, arguments, and endless explanations because sitting quietly means meeting the shadow we have long buried, the uncomfortable, the unseen, the vulnerable. And yet, that very silence is where healing begins. Nietzsche said, "When you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you." Silence is that abyss, a mirror reflecting not only who we are, but who we pretend to be. Inside this stillness, our deepest contradictions surface, the tension between light and shadow, desire and guilt, freedom and fear. It's easier to fight, to speak, to be heard, than to sit with those conflicting parts within us. Machiavelli understood power as perception. But when that power is built on insecurity, it becomes a performance rather than an authentic strength. We speak to defend, to prove, to be seen, driven by unconscious patterns shaped by childhood, trauma, and social conditioning. These invisible forces whisper, "Keep talking, or you'll be forgotten. Don't stop, or they'll see your weakness." So we keep reacting, not from clarity or choice, but from fear. The real danger isn't silence itself. It's never choosing to be silent. Because when you cannot tolerate silence, you lose control of yourself. You become a slave to the noise inside and outside, instead of mastering it. Until we recognize this, we remain trapped in a cycle of needless conflict and inner turmoil. What if your greatest enemy isn't out there? Not your boss, not your ex, not society. What if the real battle is inside you, in the hidden corners of your own mind? Why do you find yourself stuck in the same patterns again and again? Why do certain fears, failures, or toxic relationships seem to follow you no matter how hard you try to change? Because the problem isn't external, it lives deep within your psyche. As Gabor Mate reminds us, we must ask not why the addiction, but why the pain. That pain often comes from parts of yourself you've learned to ignore or silence. The masks you wear to be accepted hide the wounds that still need healing. Carl Jung said, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." True transformation begins not by avoiding your shadows, but by facing them fully. The fear of silence isn't about silence itself, it's about what rises when the noise fades. The unmet needs of your inner child, the voices you silence to be loved. The part of you that still fears invisibility because it once felt it didn't matter. We raise our voices to feel heard. We defend ourselves to feel important. But have you ever asked yourself, what am I afraid they'll see if I stop talking? What part of you believes your value depends on proving yourself again and again? Here lies the paradox. By avoiding this internal confrontation, you unknowingly sabotage what you truly want: love, peace, and purpose. Not because you don't deserve them, but because a part of you still believes you aren't enough without the noise. That belief was never truly yours. It was planted by early experiences, cultural pressures, and a wounded inner voice that learned silence was unsafe. But now, you are no longer that child. And silence, real silence, can become your strongest ally. Transformation doesn't start with a loud declaration or a sudden change. It begins in a quiet moment, when you finally stop running from yourself. When you choose to sit with your discomfort and say, I am ready to listen. In that moment, the noise loses its grip on you. Because for the first time, you choose to be fully present, with all that you feel, with all that hurts. There is no magic formula. No quick fix or perfect solution. But there is something far more powerful: awareness. The courage to look inward and admit, maybe I have betrayed myself to be accepted. Maybe the silence I fear is exactly what I need to find myself. Jung called this process individuation, becoming whole. Not perfect. Not always comfortable. But authentic. It is through this journey that you begin to integrate your shadows, your fears, and your contradictions. You stop running from what you feel. And instead, you start to embrace what has been waiting patiently for your attention all along: yourself. The more you know yourself, the less you feel the need to prove anything. Silence stops being an empty void and becomes a space of clarity. You respond instead of react. You listen instead of defend. You conserve your energy, avoid needless battles, and become a presence that commands respect, without raising your voice. The turning point isn't a shout. It's an inner whisper that says, I am not my masks. I am not my fears. I can listen to myself, and still remain at peace. And that, perhaps, is the beginning of true freedom. It invites you to witness yourself without judgment, to observe the patterns that shape your life, and to meet your fears without running away. But the answers you seek aren't found in words or arguments, they arise in the quiet moments when you simply allow yourself to be. Today, I invite you to carry this question with you. How often do you choose silence over noise? Throughout your day, pay attention to your reactions, to the urges to defend, explain, or justify. Notice the habits and fears that drive those impulses. And ask yourself gently, what would happen if you simply paused instead of reacting? If this message resonated with you, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your engagement helps us build a community of seekers, learning to embrace power through stillness. And now, for your next step inward. If this content spoke to you, watch the video appearing on your screen right now. It might be exactly what your soul needed to hear today.